Well, here we are, joined by the wonderful Joel, and I cannot help but notice there is something on top of your lip, Joel. What is it?
There is. It is my moustache.
Moustache. It's definitely moosey, yes. What is that about?
I'm not sure. It's, well, we're filming this in November, you see, so we are both partaking in Movember. So if you're wondering why the moustache is, it's because of that. But yeah, we're trying to grow it out, raise some money for Movember.
If it was a competition for the best moustache, who would be in the lead, do you think?
I believe it will be me, but we'll let the people decide. Do let us know in the comments.
I think you're probably right, to be honest.
Thank you.
This looks horrendous, doesn't it?
No, it does look quite terrible. But we'll see what it's like at the end of the month. You're not going to trim it at all. You're just going to leave it as it is.
I didn't know you was allowed to trim it. Can I trim it?
I wouldn't.
No.
No, you can't.
But at the minute, I've got like 3 long bits here, 2 long bits there, and just the odd kind of like pencil mark in between. And people are looking at me funny on the street.
I'm not surprised.
But there is a reason we're doing it.
There is.
And what is it?
Good question. Personally, the reason I'm doing it is Movember they raise funds which support men in mental health, and I think that's fantastic and a very relevant and needed cause indeed. I know that in my own life I've experienced poor mental health. I think from the age of like 16 I first experienced anxiety, and when I was in school there was hardly any education on mental health, and this feeling of anxiety which I physically felt here, I didn't even know what it was, and I thought I was sick for about 6 months. Like I just felt ill. That's the only thing I could describe it as, and I think that people need to talk about it more, and I think there needs to be more support for young men especially. And we know that the rates for suicide among young men is horrifically high, and that is absolutely devastating, and young men aren't getting the support they need, which can literally save their lives. And I think this hit home recently when an old friend of mine who was my age took his own life a few months ago, and that really hit home. And the both of us knew him. You were his youth worker for a bit when we were in youth, and he was a year above me in school. But him passing away and taking his own life really hit home for me. And I just thought, how sad is it for someone to get to that place of hopelessness in their life where that's the decision they make. And for me, I know that I have a hope, a deep hope that I find in God and my relationship with him. But many people don't have that, and that is sad. But also people don't have the support they need beyond that. But for me, when I had really bad anxiety when I was younger, there was one verse that really spoke to me. And I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but it's in Psalm 41, verse 7. And it says, "All my enemies whisper together against me. They imagine the worst for me, saying, a vile disease has afflicted him. He will never get up from the place where he lies." And it goes on to say, "I know that you are pleased with me, for my enemy does not triumph over me. Because of my integrity, you uphold me and set me in your presence forever." And in many ways, they're talking of a vile disease that has afflicted him was almost like the anxiety, and that the enemy or the anxiety was whispering around me saying that I'm on my sick bed, I'll never get past this, I'll never get over this, this will always control my life. But actually, God's saying that he's pleased with me and that he will set me in his presence forever. And we know that he is the Prince of Peace, and that where there is peace, there is no anxiety. And that massively spoke to me and my faith. My relationship with Jesus supports me on mental health, and obviously I'm still a Christian. I've still struggled with it in the past and continue to. There's good days and bad days, but I know that I have a hope in Jesus, that I was created by him, that I'm loved, that he died on the cross for me, and that also that I'll be in eternity with him when I do pass away. And my hope and desire through doing Movember is that people will get the support they need in their mental health, but also my prayer is that people will come and find a hope in Jesus, which can surpass any form of support that we can get to. But Lee, why you do Movember?
Yes, so I mean, that was incredible, everything you just shared. And one bit you said right at the beginning was you think it's an issue that we need to talk about more. I think it is it's a bit of a taboo subject, particularly among men. Just notoriously, men are kind of more difficult at kind of sharing and being honest and open, and being vulnerable with one another. Yet the staggering statistics are that 3 out of 4 suicides are actually men.
Wow.
Yeah, and one man dies every minute of every day, and these are not just statistics. These are people. These are God created people, and so that concern needs to be our concern.
Absolutely.
And we need to do everything we can to speak up about it and raise awareness and make sure it's not a taboo, but actually it's part of everyday language and conversation with our friends at school, with our families, and ask each other, how are you doing? How are you really doing? What's going on? What you're thinking about? What you're struggling with? Because quite literally, men are dying far too young, and the majority of deaths among young men can be prevented. And so if we can do anything to help change that statistic, then let's do it. And I think having something that looks like this on our faces is doing everything to raise awareness, and at least through a conversation. I've had so many conversations with people asking me, why on earth are you growing that? Because let's be honest, you can't grow a decent one, so there must be a reason why you're growing that one.
Absolutely. No, it's a good it's given me an opportunity to share, and I've not particularly shared much, well, publicly anyway, about my mental health struggles in the past, and this has given me an opportunity to do that. And I think it's the right time to. Sometimes it's felt as though it's for me to keep to myself, but ultimately when I look around and see, the decisions like our old friend who took his own life, and I think since that happened, I also was driving down a bridge in Newcastle, and I saw a man on the edge of it with the police, and he was was threatening to jump, and then I heard another friend walk past someone in Newcastle who was about to jump off the top of the house, and it's like these are all young men, and it's just like it's all around us, and I just think it's too long now to not talk about it. And as somebody who's been through and can almost empathise to some aspect, I think it's time to speak up a bit more, even though it makes me uncomfortable. Yeah,
it does. And your mental health is not just your issue. It's also my issue. I share in your well-being, in your health, because as a friend of yours, I obviously love you and I have compassion for you and care for you, and so it needs to be my priority. Your mental health, and if everyone thought like that and shared one another's concerns and needs, then I think we would see a change in these stats, and the world, particularly for men, would be a much healthier, wholesome, joyful place.
Absolutely. And in case there is someone listening to this who is struggling with the mental health right now, whether it be male or female, definitely a piece of advice we would do is to speak to somebody who loves you.
Yeah.
If that's a parent, or if that's a youth worker, if you go to a church or a church leader or a teacher. We know that schools are really good at supporting people with mental health problems now.
Yeah.
Speak to a teacher and start that conversation. And that's what it did for me. I remember after a while, like I was really struggling with it, and I just went to my sixth form teacher and I just told him everything that was going on. And from that point, the healing started. So go and do that. Any other advice, Lee, for somebody who's...
Yeah, if you're maybe struggling to think of someone that you can talk to, then there's a great organisation called the Samaritans. And the Samaritans are up and down the country. They are just ordinary people like you and I, with a real heart for people, sat at the end of the phone waiting for someone to talk to. And they would love to hear from you and to journey through a conversation with you if you had no one else to turn to. And of course, as well, if anyone is in a desperate situation and you think it is this is serious, then do not hesitate to call the emergency services.
Absolutely. Well, we hope this conversation has been helpful. Mental health is something we'd like to speak about more. In some ways, we're going to work out how we do that in the future. But we do pray that this is beneficial to you, and hopefully you can bring around more conversation with people about mental health, and also support your friends, and you can find support with your mental health too.